Local presentation of Read About It is made possible in part by a grant from Cox Communications of Oklahoma City, proud sponsor of this effort to promote reading, education, and literacy in our community.
Adventure and suspense on the high seas will be the topic on Read About It tonight. Hi, I'm BJ Williams. Douglas Kelly will tell us about his book, The Captain's Wife. Susie Beasley will talk with Ruby Soutier. Kids Corner will feature Heidi Johnson. We also have Doug Benton, Evelyn Davis, and Gary Rodriguez. Coming up, Douglas Kelly.
The following public service program is brought to you by the Metropolitan Library System. And now, Read About It, with your host, BJ Williams.
Every March, the Oklahoma Center for the Book has its Oklahoma Book Awards banquet, and this last March I was fortunate to attend and was able to talk with the winner of the Oklahoma Book Award 2002 for fiction. The gentleman's name is Douglas Kelly. He was born in Arkansas, but he wised up and he now lives in Oklahoma. This is his first novel, and I think you will enjoy what he had to say about putting it together and writing it. Here's Douglas Kelly. What inspired you to write The Captain's Wife?
I was taking a writing class over in Fort Smith at West Ark, now University of Arkansas at Fort Smith. The instructor loaned me a book called The Atlantic, and it's a sort of a history of the Atlantic Ocean. And when it got to the part about the sailing ships of the 1800s, and the chapter about clipper ships was a one-paragraph mention of this particular voyage of a ship called Neptune's Car, in which the captain became ill. The first mate was arrested for insubordination, and the only person left on board the ship who knew how to navigate was the captain's 19-year-old wife. So she took over the duties of navigator, kept the crew in line, and sailed the ship on around to San Francisco from around the tip of South America around Cape Horn. And after reading that one paragraph, I thought, there's a story in there, and I'd sure like to know more about that. As it turned out, about 3 weeks later, I was in San Diego on business, and right across the street from my Holiday Inn, looking out the window, was the San Diego Maritime Museum.
Aha.
And I thought, I wonder if they know anything about this ship. And I went over there, and I paid my $3 to get in, and when I came out 2 or 3 hours later, I had enough information about the ship and its build and its voyages and its crews to know that I had a story, and just took off from there.
Now, did you start writing this story first, or did you do research first? Because it's obvious from writing this that you know what you're talking about.
If it's obvious I know what I'm talking about, it's obvious I know how to pull the wool over people's eyes. Because when I started this, I knew very little about sailing ships, or clipper ships in particular. No, a lot of research. I started writing it as I researched. The research took about 3.5 or 4 years, and the writing took about 1.5 years or 2 years. They kind of overlapped a little bit. I did start writing while I was still researching, because as I went on, it got to where I was finding less and less information, so finally I just started writing it.
Mm-hmm. Well, now you told me earlier that you do not sail, and so you had to learn, you had to find out not only about this captain and his wife, you had to find out just what a clipper ship was. Right.
Well, I would go my job as I travel is as a corporate pilot. I fly business jets for a company out of Fort Smith. And as I would travel around, if I happened to be in San Diego, I'd research there. If I went to San Francisco, where the ship ended up, I researched there. New York, where the ship started out on the voyage, I researched there. The couple was from Boston, so when I went to Boston, I had a chance to, and so all these places, every place had a little more information, and it was very difficult to come by. This story is 150 years old, and it had a little bit of fame at the time, but over the years it had been pretty well forgotten, and it was hard to find out about it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're right. When I talk about, once I found the story of this particular voyage and knew all the facts I could get from that, then I had to basically learn how to sail a square-rigged ship in order to make it all plausible and real sounding. Mm-hmm. And so far I haven't had anybody call me up and say, you got that all wrong. So far so good. Well,
then you've got it right, because believe me, they do call and they write and they email saying, I'm sorry, that's not a mizzen mast.
Yeah. Not only learning, which mast was which and which sail was which and the terminology and all that, but I had to learn in a given weather situation, when it came time to take in some of the sails, for instance, I had to learn which sail they would bring in first, and how they would set the sails. If you had the wind blowing off your left-hand quartering, behind you, how would you set the sails for those kind of winds? Had a lot to learn.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's a dramatic story because you start the story at a really tense moment when they are trying to round the Cape, and they have run into what I understand were the worst storms in many, many years in an area that was known for bad storms.
Cape Horn is, even today, famous for its bad weather for ships. This particular year, 1856, well, on a given day, on a given voyage, if the weather was good, you could round Cape Horn in 2 or 3 days if you had good weather. Usually it took anywhere from a week to 2 weeks to 3 weeks. This particular year, this voyage took place, one ship took 80 days to get around Cape Horn. And there were other times when it took even longer, another years. And some years they just couldn't get around at all because the winds and the currents were against them going westbound so strongly.
Mm-hmm. Well, you made me feel cold and wet and frightened. So
I didn't mean to scare you. I had one gentleman tell me he got claustrophobic from being down inside the cabin of the ship, reading it. So, yeah, that's a great compliment when people tell me things like that.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I really enjoyed, and it's right at the end of the book when you're talking about the research, and you said it was a number of months until you found out the captain's wife's name, which is Mary.
Right.
And you talked about how you felt when you discovered that.
Yeah, and those old accounts, and this went on for a long time, the wife was usually referred to, in this case, as Mrs. Patton. And old church records I've seen where they would give the members of the church, they would say Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, or members of the church, and they would never give the wife's name. She was just Mrs. Williams, for instance, or whatever. And all the newspaper accounts of the time and all the old stories that I read about it at the time referred to how Captain Joshua Patton left out on the ship Neptune's car with his wife, Mrs. Patton. And it was, like you say, several months into the research when I learned that her name was Mary, and it was quite exhilarating to finally find that. I mean, here's a little basic piece of information of the whole story. I'm writing a story about the captain's wife, and I couldn't learn her name. Yeah, it was exhilarating to find it, yeah.
Well, I think you did a wonderful job taking what was a real story and making it believable for us, taking one paragraph and creating a book that will make me feel frightened and somebody else claustrophobic.
Well, everything in the story of any importance, any fact, like the departure time or anything about the ship or most of the crew's names, that sort of stuff, all those are fact. The only thing that's really fiction in there is the stuff to fill in the middle, flesh out the scenes and all that sort of stuff. But all the facts, when they set sail, when they arrived, the fact that they met another ship en route that had trouble and they were unable to help it because of their own problems, the time they spent going around Cape Horn, the troubles with the first mate, all those things are documented in their facts. But after all that, if I just reported the facts, I could get into a 3 or 4 page story. And so I had to do a lot of building to make it all into a book.
Well, I think what you had to do was put life into it. I mean, make these real characters other than just, even with the name Mary Patton, that really doesn't tell us anything about her. And so in a way, you almost had to invent her.
I did invent her, but not really, because at the end of the voyage, there was a letter that was published in the New York newspapers that she wrote to the insurance companies who rewarded her $1,000 for saving this ship that was worth $400,000 or $500,000. Some people said she didn't get paid well enough. But she wrote this letter saying that all she did was just a duty of a wife toward her husband. And that made it, I could use her voice from that letter.
I want to thank you very much for talking with us.
Thanks very much for having me. Thank you.
We've had with us Douglas Kelly telling us about his book, The Captain's Wife. You can find it in your library and your bookstore. I hope you enjoyed that talk with Doug Kelly. If you get a chance, check out The Captain's Wife. Coming up next, we have Susie Beasley. She'll be talking with Ruby Soutier about a book I think that anybody who's ever had a bad hair day will enjoy.
Ruby, come on, give us a little overview of Curly Girl, the handbook by Lorraine Massey.
Well, this is probably the most personal book that I have ever brought. And this book has a subtitle, and I can't remember the whole subtitle, but the way it ends is Set Them Free, Curls, How to Love Them,
Right.
take
Celebration
care
of
of them,
curls.
and set them free. And to me, setting curls free might be kind of a scary thing to do, but this book is written by a hairdresser who has naturally curly hair, which makes you think she's a very good author for a book called Curly Girl. But this book opens with a quiz that you take to let you know if you have curly hair. And it goes on to talk about the fact that there are 3 types of curly hair. There are corkscrew curls, there are Botticelli curls, and there are wavy curls, which to me wavy is probably the best kind of curls to have. And when it gives you characteristics, and it gives you a spring factor test that you can take to figure out which type of curls you have. And I figured that I probably had corkscrew curls because my curls are fairly tight, but when I took the spring factor test,
You found out
I
something
found
different.
out that actually I have Botticelli curls, which is such a pretty name, Botticelli curls.
yes.
I like that name. But it goes on after you take the test, and it goes on and it tells you how to take care of curly hair, and it tells you some simple hairstyles that you can do. It tells you how to find a hairdresser that is sympathetic to curly
curls,
hair.
right.
One of the most fun things about this book is that it has like confessions of curly girls, and they talk about the rolling your hair on the orange juice cans to make it straight, and ironing it, and
Just different things.
using straighteners. There's also a chapter in this book about caring for African American
Right.
hair, which is curly hair as well.
Right.
And at the very end of the book, it has a 12-step program for curly girls. But her whole point of this book is to like the fact that you have curly hair, try to make the most of curly hair. And her 12-step program has to do with reciting to yourself, I will no longer blow dry my hair straight, and I won't iron it, and I won't do this.
So
and-
this book is, as she says, it's more than just hair, it's an attitude thing.
It is, it
Okay.
is, and it's a great book.
Well, Ruby, we appreciate you coming and sharing with us Curly Girl. And this is by Lorraine Massey, and this is available at your local library and perhaps your local bookstore. And we'll see you next time. Thank you, Ruby.
Thanks, Susie and Ruby. Coming up after a short break, I'll tell you about some exciting books.
When you read to your child for just 15 minutes a day, you're doing so much more than just reading. You're building a bond that lasts a lifetime. Hi, I'm Elisa Johnson with the Metropolitan Library Commission, and I urge you to read to your children. Not only will they learn to love to read, but they'll be a better student. Our children's librarian will help you find just the right book. The next time your child hands you a book, take the time to read. You'll both be glad you did.
Elizabeth Peters was born and brought up in Illinois. She earned her PhD from the Oriental Institute. The PhD was in Egyptology, and I'm sure she looked forward to a long life as an archaeologist. Well, things don't always work out the way you think they're going to, because she's had a long life as a mystery writer. And her most recent effort is The Golden One. It follows the further adventures of Amelia Peabody and her husband Emerson, and a truly continuing, expanding family of friends and important people that apparently get involved in all kinds of goings-on in Egypt. This particular book starts off in 1917. It's World War I, the Great War. People are really beginning to be concerned about submarines torpedoing ships, so the Emersons have decided that they are going to stay year-round in Egypt. In the past, they had excavated in the winter, gone home to England in the summertime when it gets really hot in Egypt. They're staying this time. They brought with them Ramses, their son, his wife, Nofret. They also have various various other relations that have come with them. They are met and greeted by a family of Arabs who have been their friends and helpers through many years. And of course, they tumble right into terrible goings on with murder and mayhem following right behind. Amelia is herself as usual. This book, however, is divided into, part of it is Amelia's first-person experiences of what's going on, but it alternates with sections that take a more impersonal view of what happens with Ramses, who gets tapped by the English Secret Service to go into the fortified and Turkish-held city of Gaza. Not only that, they have tomb robbers who have discovered tombs, people dying and bodies falling everywhere. It's great, good fun. If you've enjoyed following Amelia before, you will enjoy The Golden One just as well. If you haven't, this is just as good a place as any to pick up the story, and then you can go back and trace their footsteps through Egyptian archaeology. My next book is a slightly different tack. It is the Vegetarian Meat and Potatoes book. It's written by Robin Robertson, who is a former chef and vegetarian cooking instructor. She's written 8 previous books. This is a plain, no-nonsense book. None of the recipes run more than 2 pages. They are clearly laid out. Very enjoyable. These are the kinds of vegetarian dishes that remind you of what Mom used to make, even if she did make meat and potatoes. Most of them are nice and homey, although there are some ethnic recipes in here as well. These are hearty dishes. They're the kind that I label comfort food when you're feeling a little down and need somebody to comfort you. This is the book that you want to pick up. The next book is Celebrating 150 Years, America's Smithsonian. This is a catalog of an exhibit that has toured the country, but it also takes a look at the extensive collections of the Smithsonian. Somebody once called the Smithsonian America's attic, and it truly is. If you want to find musical instruments, paintings, precious stones, space capsules, quilts, or ruby shoes, you will find them at the Smithsonian, and this is a wonderful look at all that our nation's capital has to offer at the various Smithsonian museums. Coming up next, we've got Kids Corner. Kelly Rio will be talking with Heidi Johnson about some books for our very youngest readers.
Someone's in the kitchen with Heidi. Hi, Heidi Johnson has brought us a really fabulous kids cooking book. Heidi, tell us what you brought.
Well, I brought the Betty Crocker's Kids Cook book, and I was really impressed by it. First of all, the packaging is very attractive. It's very usable because I like spiral-bound cookbooks. They lay flat when you're trying to use them in the kitchen. It has cartoon characters all throughout the book, and I think it would be very attractive visually to children. It is the book for the very basic beginning cook. You ever heard somebody that said, I couldn't boil water? This book will actually tell you how to boil water.
That's a good start.
And I was very impressed by that.
Well, what about safety in cooking for kids?
It very much stresses that. From chapter 1, there is a special chapter, as a matter of fact, about safety in the kitchen, where it not only talks about food safety, the proper and safe way to store foods and prepare foods, but also how to be careful with knives, have adult supervision, how to deal with hot pots, what to do and not to do. And again, if you need help, have an adult with you to supervise, to give you a hand. So it very much stresses that, and it gives some good hints, some safer ways maybe to do certain things that you might not think of on your own. It talks about the proper way of measuring, following a recipe, not skipping the steps. Plus, it has some marvelous recipes in there for children. One right here you're looking at, tortilla wheels. They look great. I have tried those. They taste great, and they're easy to prepare. Also, it tells you how long it will take you to prepare something, how long the type of what you need for ingredients, all your different utensils you'll need ahead of time, for how many you can fix this. It has breakfasts, lunches, dinners, munchies, party.
This is a good way
materials.
to enable kids, to help them feel more confident in the kitchen.
Oh, yes.
To teach them some simple things that they can do to help mom.
Exactly, and I know some of these recipes, they're true and tried and very delicious. So hopefully that would be an inspiration for children too.
This is a very friendly book. There's lots of cartoony characters, monster types that are cooking, so it looks really safe and really fun for anyone who's interested in getting started in cooking. Thanks, Heidi, for bringing Betty Crocker's Kids Cook book. You can find it at your local bookstore or at your favorite library.
Thanks, Kelly and Heidi. Coming up next, we have Doug Benton of the Metropolitan Library System and the Oklahoma Gazette. He'll be talking with Evelyn Davis from the Downtown Library with a book they're just dying to share with you.
I'm Evelyn Davis with the Metropolitan Library System, and I have here with me Doug Benton.
Yes, you do.
Alas, I do. And he's going to read for you the title.
I knew you could never remember it. How I Made 100 Movies in Hollywood and Never Lost a Dime. It's by Roger Corman.
And in a previous interview, you spoke about B movies, and this book looks like an extension of that discussion. Well, is it?
Not according to Corman. Now, Corman would say that he never made B movies, that what he made were exploitation films.
Would he be grossly insulted if you refer to them as B movies?
It takes an awful lot, I think, to grossly insult Roger Corman.
Well, in view of that...
But I would say to that, now, don't jump on me here. He would probably say, whoever told me I made B movies doesn't understand the nomenclature of the film industry.
Very well. In light of that, what are Corman's contributions to American film, even popular cultural in general?
Okay, I think Corman, began making films in the mid-50s, and sometimes his budgets were $20,000 to make an entire film, and he would shoot it in 5 days. I think his record is 2 days to shoot a film. It is amazing. It is absolutely amazing. His contributions, I think, are the fact that a lot of people who are big names in films today began working for Roger Corman, and they did everything. They would write scripts. Jack Nicholson wrote several scripts for Roger Corman, as well as breaking into acting, film acting in Corman's films. Jonathan Demme, who won the Oscar for Silence of the Lambs, began working for Roger Corman. Francis Ford Coppola, who made The Godfather, began working for Corman. A lot of people. Martin Scorsese made his first commercial film for Roger Corman. And these guys had to learn everything about movie making when they worked for Corman because the budgets were so small.
They had to do it
They had
fast.
to do it all, and they had to do it fast.
How did they manage to do it so quickly? Why did he not succumb to disaster if he only had a few days?
Well, you would think that he was very prepared. I mean, he may have shot a movie like Little Shop of Horrors. He made the original version of Little Shop of Horrors with Jack Nicholson in 2 days on a bet, but he spent 3 days, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's more than the shooting schedule, rehearsing, getting everything in order. Corman's background was in engineering, so he knew details, and he had a genius for this kind of stuff. He had a genius for this kind of stuff, so that he could see in its completed film in his mind. I mean, he can look at a movie and say, there are 3 frames that need to be cut before we can release this film. He was very precise, and he knew exactly what he was doing all the time.
Well, in view of all of this skill, what does he consider his greatest mistake?
He made a couple of movies with a couple of fellows breaking into the business named Dennis Hopper and Peter Fonda. And they brought a script to him that was Easy Rider that he didn't think they could shoot in the amount of time that was available to them. So he turned them down. He did not produce Easy Rider. Didn't have anything to do with it.
Oh, well.
Oh, well.
Thank you very much, Doug.
You're welcome, Evelyn.
Thanks, Doug and Evelyn. And coming up after a short break, I'll talk with Gary Rodriguez about a book he really enjoyed.
We are more than 300 strong. We are diverse from all walks of life. We are musicians. We are teachers. We are computer experts and business leaders, each with the same goal, to meet the information needs of the people of Oklahoma County. We are the librarians of the Metropolitan Library System. How can we help you?
Gary, what have you brought for us tonight?
This is a pretty interesting book. Did you know that Canadians were drafted and fought for the United States Army in the Vietnam War?
I had no idea. I thought this is where you went to get away from it.
Well, unfortunately, this is a story. It's called There It Is, a Canadian in the Vietnam War by Les D. Brown. And it's a story about a guy that his family moved from Canada when he was about 8 years old. They moved to California. His dad had a business and this and that and the other. And he was kind of bumming around and went to college and just decided that didn't what he wanted to do. And so he said, well, I'm safe from the draft. I don't have to worry about this. This was the 60s, you know, and I don't have to worry about it. Surprise, you're a permanent resident. You're just as eligible for the draft as anybody. And so he was shocked, you know, so they took him to the induction center, and all the while he's thinking, oh, well, they'll put me in something that's non-combative because, you know, I'm Canadian, you know. Well, didn't work out that way. He got, of course, stuck in an infantry group. And he says, wow, you know, this is going from bad to worse. So as he kept going along, you know, he kept trying to tell everybody, hey, you know, I'm a Canadian. And they all kind of looked at him and said, so what? So it's a really neat story of someone in the 60s, naive about how the whole thing works. He just kind of cruising along, having a good time, and reality jumps up and kind of bites him, you know. And so he goes out in the bush, and he's a good soldier. He was a minesweeper. He didn't appreciate that because he was tall and lanky, and the guy next to him was short. So, well, here, you get the grenade launcher, and hey, tall guy, you get the other one. So he kept getting stuck with the bad stuff. And as things kept going on, it really bothered him. And he finally, after 9 months, he goes, hey, I'm tired of this. I'm going to take conscientious objector. And he opened up a whole new world of pain and anguish. So.
Well, actually, there was an incident that sort of triggered that desire to be a CO, wasn't it?
Yeah, he ended up coming face to face with Viet Cong on a patrol. And it was, you know, kind of like the old John Wayne, whoever gets the gun off first. They both surprised each other. So he pulls his gun up and pulls the trigger, it goes click and jams, and he's sitting there fighting with it, and another guy ended up shooting at him. But that was it. He says, hey, it's getting close, it's getting personal, I'm going to get killed out here, I'm ready to quit. So he goes before a sergeant. He got to reading there was a Supreme Court decision that says you could declare yourself a conscientious objector. So he said, that's what I want to do. And he walked in, told the sergeant that, and after a whole lot of shouting and yelling, he said, fine, you don't have your gun, but you're going to run bunker duty. So and it tells the hassle he got out of it. And even when he come back to the States, you know, and finished out the rest of his term, a lot of times you don't hear about those stories. Mm-hmm. This kind of tells about some of the dirty details he was done, and he didn't care, you know, his long hair and all that good stuff. And so it's really a good book of a view of what happened coming of age, if you will, some of these guys in Vietnam. It's a really well-written book.
Yeah, with an interesting slant, I would think.
Yes, it is. It's an interesting slant, the Canadian side of it.
Okay, so, and the title and author again?
The title is There It Is, a Canadian in the Vietnam War by Les D. Brown.
Thank you, Gary. And you can find this book at your library and your favorite bookstore. Be sure and check us out on our website, www.metrolibrary.org. You can find out about everything we have in our collection. You can also find out where each of our libraries is, their operating hours. A list of the programs that are available at our libraries will also be included. You can also find out what's on Read About It this week if you check us out at our website. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.
Local presentation of Read About It is made possible in part by a grant from Cox Communications of Oklahoma City, proud sponsor of this effort to promote reading, education, and literacy in our community.